Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, for the people listening out there, they'd be like, what, you guys take last week off? No, we did a whole NFL free agency thing out of some technical difficulties, so that didn't go out, unfortunately. But we did promise you guys we would talk college hoops, and so we are delivering on that promise. Because today is the March Madness preview, and I know that is basically Christmas for you.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a fun one. I like getting your opinion. You're kind of more in the nitty gritty of lower levels of college basketball, I think, than I am. I'll catch occasional games, but I get to hear about players before the tournament starts straight from Brad. He's been betting on these guys all year.
Yeah, it's nice to look through, and then of course, the guys that are like good in the regular season at these mid majors, they get bounced in like the first round of the tournament. I'm like,
Damn
oh god,
Roddy,
this team's
baby.
actually in the tourney. So, well, we got you covered today. It's going to be a different type of preview than we're not going to go through our bracket and be like, let's fill it out together, guys. Like that's not what we're going to do here. Everybody has their own strategy and how you fill out a bracket. People who don't know college basketball, they have just as good of a chance as winning your pool as anybody else. But what Tyson are going to do, we're going to talk about the number one seeds that could be in danger this year. I mean, for a while it was like that never happens, but it's happened a couple times, only 2 times in history. So we'll talk about if anybody's in trouble there. We'll look at the the classic 5-12 look, as well as any other potential upsets we've circled before going through the different regions, talking about what's catching our eye, teams there, teams anybody we like can make a run, and all that good stuff. So first of all, Tyson, before I get into a stat I want to give out, I know you have an overall strategy that you normally deploy during March Madness. Now, is that something you hold close to the vest? Is that something only friends and family know, or are you sharing it with the good listeners if I said what I said?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I wanted to tee you up because I know you got this Calcutta deal, and so we
Yes.
always try to. And you and I, we're have vast or limited resources, so we have to pick and choose which guys and which teams we think we
Very
can
careful.
return on. So,
Very careful. Well, to me, like one thing that I always look at, and this has nothing to do with it's not like empirical fact, but give me the teams that played well in the Maui Invitational to start the year. If I'm on a 50-50 like jump there, and I've seen UConn play early in the season in a big tournament like this against good teams, and they did well, I'm more inclined to pick them over somebody else. But that's just kind of something that's worked for me, and not for nothing. There's been quite a few of national champions that have come out of that tournament in the last 15 years.
yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of that, especially with the preseason tourneys, it's like if you're good at the beginning of the season, chances are that you're a good team. Like you'll have some lulls throughout the year, but if you have a high level that you're coming in at early, there's a chance you're going to make a run. And
Because we're
so,
not looking for floor plays at all in
right,
March Madness. You want strictly ceiling.
exactly. You want ceiling, and you want low floor as well. Like you don't want, Arizona last year. Here's just an example. Like when they were at their best, I mean, my God, could anybody run with them? Could anybody compete with them? But at their worst, they couldn't defend. They couldn't hit shots. It's like that's a recipe for losing to Princeton, even though you're the number 2 seed and dominated the Pac-12 all year. So I think the Maui thing is great because it's an early tournament. It's kind of a feel to this. You get some early games and you get seeded, and you got to go in a one and done style. And so I think that's when you really get to see which of these teams can kind of put that together in that type of style of play.
How much stock are you putting into conference championships and conference championship tournaments this year? Because this year especially feels like there was at least more bids stolen than we're used to.
Yeah, I think the official what the committee said, the official number that they looked at was 4. I think there was an argument that there was 5 that you could really look at. It's like, man, they kind of took a bid from somebody, and I think you saw that with St. John's and Indiana State not getting at-large bids. But Tyson, what I've learned when I'm looking through this is you really shouldn't take stock in teams that go on a deep conference tournament run. Like a
No.
lot of times that's just who gets hot. Some teams are off for 2 days. Other teams have been playing for 2 days. And then when you get time off, when you get prepared for March Madness, all things are equal. That's when those teams, it's like, oh, you just got hot during that specific time of the calendar. So I've taken less stock into that in years past or than I used to.
Definitely. And like if you see somebody 4 times, 5 times or whatever over the course of a season, it's going to look a whole hell of a lot different than when you're playing somebody they've had 4 days to prepare for at the time of tip, something like that.
Yeah. So keep that in mind here. And I will throw this out here before we get into the fun stuff. For those looking to fill out a bracket, for those looking for futures plays, so here's what you want to look at. and this is kind of like a no shit type of deal, but you want a good offense and a good defense. But how good and how good? So 19 of the last 21 champions have been top 21 in adjusted offense and top 37 of adjusted defense by the Ken Pomeroy ratings. So if you look at that, that just leaves 8 teams who statistically can win the championship if you go by this metric. That's UConn, Houston, Purdue, Arizona, Marquette, Creighton, Duke, and Auburn. Now, based on offense being outside the top 21, North Carolina would be cut and Tennessee would be cut. So those are your 8 teams really looking at just adjusted metrics and stats. Now, if you want to get into a little funnier type of business here, no national title winner has ever come out of, from losing their first game in the conference tournament. So Tennessee, Creighton, Duke, Kansas, Bama, they all lost in the first game they played in the conference tournament. Historically, they'd be eliminated. Also, here's a little getting into the weeds for you. Only 2 champs over the past 2 decades did not have blue in their uniforms. So Baylor in 2021 and Louisville in 2013 were the only 2 over the past 2 decades. So that just leaves, based on the KenPom metrics, the conference tournament criteria, and these uniforms deal, that's UConn, Arizona, Marquette, and Auburn. So there's just a little fun stuff for you there. But I mean, for me, Tyson, I'll throw it back to you. I do take a look at the adjusted offense and adjusted defense, especially in a tournament setting.
Yeah, absolutely. I also I don't put as much weight into strength of schedule as probably that I should, but there's something to be said about some of these teams. I know James Madison skidded a little bit, but the run that they get off to start the year when they're just blowing the doors off their conference opponents, it's not college football, right? Like, we're lacing up, we're going to go play my 5 versus yours, and in this day and age, like we just saw it a year ago, how much experience matters and how much guys that have been around the block and played a ton of games together matters, because for as much flash and as excitement as some of these teams have, there's a reason that when you look at the 1 seeds, especially, you start going, oh, North Carolina has 2 guys that have scored 2,000 career points, or the Purdue guys have been together for a long time. The UConn guys are coming off a national championship. Houston seems like they have 15 guys who've been there for 6 years at this point. So you look at experience, but also it's a quick turnaround. I just want somebody that's going to get into a fist fight more than anything else. Like, it's fun to be pretty. Ask Arizona how far being pretty goes when it comes to March.
And I should say that the stats I just laid out was from Brandon Anderson of the Action Network, and he did a ton of work on this. So go check that out. It's on Action Network app or actionnetwork.com. He lays out a bunch of good nuggets for you if you're looking for that. So before you fill it out, this will come out on Wednesday. So dive into that. It's a bunch of good stuff. I'll be referencing some of those things throughout this deal. It's just kind of different trends. And if you're a better, he lays out some different against the spread type of looks and things like that. But Tyson, let's dive in here. Is there a number 1 seed in danger here? Because as we go through it, UConn defending champs playing Stetson. North Carolina, either they're playing the winner of Wagner and Howard on the 16 line. Purdue's going to face the winner of Montana State and Grambling on the 16 line. And then Houston's facing Longwood. It doesn't seem like there's any vulnerable ones to me. Now, we thought that last year, right? Like, it was Fairleigh Dickinson who pulled up the upset over Purdue, who looked unbeatable coming in. But I think the short answer for me is no, but I think we want to pick one of them. I'll throw it to you. Is there the number 1 seed that stands out the most to you that could be in danger?
Probably not in the first round. I think that gets a little hard. I will say, if Purdue lost to a 16 again, it'd be pretty funny. And Robert Ford III is probably the best player on any 16 seed from Montana State. But that's not a very good basketball team, right? Like, I think there were 6th in the Big Sky this season, kind of treaded water, stayed above 500, and then struck in a crazy conference tournament where I think the 1 and 2 seeds both lost right away, and they met the 3 seed in the conference championship game. But if there was somebody that was going to lose early, Brad, when you look at this West portion of the bracket here, things can get pretty tight pretty quick. There's a lot of blue bloods and guys that used to be blue bloods are kind of kicking around here, and some people trying to make names for themselves. I would say that North Carolina might be the most vulnerable to not get to the Sweet 16, just based on I think that there are things that North Carolina does really, really well. Like, they're always going to be big, and they're going to rebound. They're going to do X, Y, and Z that we've seen North Carolina do for the last 10 years. But they can go cold like nobody else on this one line in the tournament. And I think that is kind of the thing where if Michigan State or whoever it is just starts raining down threes, right? Tyson Walker makes it, he scores 30 points, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, and the other thing, this is not a North Carolina team that we've come to get used to in the past. Like their defense is what's driving them.
Yep.
They're sixth in the country in adjusted defense, only 24th in adjusted offense. That's why they're on the outside looking in from those Ken Palm metrics on who can win and who statistically has won. It's hard for me to look at North Carolina and be like, man, I just don't know if their offense is good enough, just based on what we've seen.
They got some
But
guys that have been scoring since we were in high school.
that's what it feels like. I mean, this is a veteran-laden team, but I mean, Tyson, when I'm looking through it, you don't have their microwave and Caleb. And then you look around, Cormac Ryan, kind of same deal, like a veteran. But the issue is, if he gets cold, he's streaky. Armando Bacot, he can give you the 10 and 10 and the double-double. That guy's not really going for 30. So I think when you kind of look through it, you got a bunch of role players. You've been able to do very well, get on the 1 seed. How much of that was because you're playing in the ACC? And I think that's the question mark people have about this North Carolina team.
I can't believe you, of all people, just questioned the ACC's basketball superiority. It's been a rough year for you.
Well, it's been a rough couple of years, to be completely honest. The ACC has not been great, but I'd probably agree with you. I mean, listen, Florida Atlantic, I'm not even sure if they get past Northwestern.
It seems
But
unlikely.
I think Florida Atlantic could probably give UConn a better game than Northwestern. So I think if it's Florida Atlantic, maybe it's UConn. I know that's everybody's darling. There's some different stats. You know, teams going back to back since 2007, they rarely make it past the Sweet 16. In fact, none of them have. So UConn should be on upset alert early. It's just, are they going to buck the trend or not? That's the real question here. So looking through it, I mean, Houston, I don't see them losing to Longwood. I don't see them losing to a Nebraska or an A&M because their defense is so good. I know it's fun to talk about upsets with Purdue. This feels like a different team since they have more veterans. And I think you kind of have to look at North Carolina. What if it's a rock fight with Michigan State? We've seen them do it in the past. We've seen them be outmanned and proverbially outgunned, and they come out on top.
Well, just to add on to that quickly on the Purdue thing, is like we were texting yesterday about maybe TCU could beat Purdue, right? And then it was like, okay, Utah State's never won a game in the tournament. That's going to end eventually. I know that the whole country is like they were 0-10 or whatever. This is a better team. I mean, they're a step slow defensively, but TCU is welcome to the roller coaster. Like you might throw up watching this team play basketball, and it might be out of joy or disgust. And so it just gets really hard to predict like 1 seed's going down. It'll happen. We know it will. But the other part of this is they're just bigger than everybody else. Like Houston is different, obviously, than UConn, North Carolina, and Purdue as far as like true size and the amount of giants that they have. But a lot of these small schools, when they're pulling upsets, it's offensive rebounding and it's second chance points and all that stuff. It's hard to imagine that Armando Bacot is going to get boxed out by somebody from a 16 seed.
Let's move into the everybody's favorite, the 5-12, right? You got to take a 12. You got to take a 12. You know what's going to happen. And honestly, Tyson, that was the old school. Now you got to pick the 14 over the threes. You know, those
6 over 11 or 11 over 6.
Like all the time now. It just the criteria keeps changing. But, you know, every single time it's a 12 versus a 5. And I do want to point out, I think it's because these fives get a little overvalued by the committee, right? Because normally they're from the big majors, the Power 5 conferences, or they're one of the better mid-major type of the schools. And then they put the 12s like, oh, I don't know. We didn't really watch a lot of them during the season. How good are they really? And it's like, well, they're pretty good, actually, these 12s. And so we're always going to get a couple of these. So just to run through them, San Diego State facing UAB on the 5-12 line in the East. St. Mary's facing Grand Canyon on the 5-12 line in the West. Wisconsin, James Madison, 5-12 line in the South. And then Gonzaga, McNeese on the 5-12 line in the Midwest. So, Tyson, what are you eyeing here? What's your favorite look?
Well, I feel like it has to be James Madison, and I think everybody's kind of like wants in on that, right? They start the year, they beat Michigan State. We're all like, what the hell is going on? They peak. I think, did they get into the top 25? Didn't they peak at like 23 or something?
I think they were number 7. They went on a run for a while, and then they lost like 8 out of 11 games or something like that.
Something happened, but kind of fell out of like the nation's focus, and so I think them being on the 12 line here isn't super surprising. Brad, I really want to be intrigued by Grand Canyon. The problem is that St. Mary's plays a style of basketball that unless you have essentially you need more than just superior basketball players, right? You need guys who know how to also play the game that St. Mary's is going to play, because like they took 2 or 3 away from Gonzaga, and it wasn't until the third time this year that Gonzaga kind of was like, shoot, we can't just out athlete our way out of this like we normally do. We have to play the same style of game you do. And I just don't think Grand Canyon's capable of that. The other one, like, are we really going to pick against San Diego State after last year? It feels like they might be ripe for an upset, but then you kind of think about the pedigree there, and then to round it out, Gonzaga could lose to McNeese State. Gonzaga could go to the Final Four. I don't know what's happening.
I know, because that's the thing. Like, I'm looking at McNeese right now, the 51st in adjusted offense, 84th in adjusted defense. That is not a team ripe for beating Gonzaga. Like, if you're going to give up points to Gonzaga, and if you can't stop them, and you also struggle to attack their weak defense, it just doesn't feel like it. Like, I know that's the popular thing, and Seth Davis immediately was like, McNeese is beating Gonzaga. I was like, dude, I don't
When's the last
know.
time he was right on those calls? He does it every
Yes.
year, and I feel like it's never the first one he says.
I agree. And then to your Grand Canyon point, 63rd on adjusted offense, 51 on adjusted D. And you look at that, and it's like, gosh, if you're just having a hard time to score, St. Mary's, we know, is a good defense. 16th in adjusted defense. They're going to suffocate. If you already struggle against that level of competition, now you got to face a St. Mary's team who can really get after you. Tyson, I'll tell you why my favorite look, besides James Madison, because I think that is both of our favorites. I think UAB can beat San Diego State. I've been watching the San Diego State team all year. I have not been impressed once by that offense, and the stats go to prove it here. I mean, 62nd in adjusted offense. Sure, their defense is great, 9th, but we know that if you're going to slow the tempo down and you're going to have to make shots and contested shots in these games, I don't trust San Diego State to do it. Like last year, it was fun. They had guys who could hit big shots. I have not seen that from this team this year. It feels like a different team to me. I'm going to circle UAB as an upset candidate.
I love it. Maybe a little. Why are all the Alabama teams in Spokane, by the way? What is that? What's going on?
Maybe they just want to catch the charter flight together or something. I don't know.
I guess.
Let's get to the other upsets that we have circled. So we're going to go a little free flowing before we move into the different regions. And, if you're listening to this, you got your bracket in front of you. You've already taken a peek at this. I'll throw it to you first. What's something sure you're just contemplating with yourself that you're like, man, I want to circle this, or I have it. I just don't know if I'm going to do it yet.
Does it count to put Oregon here at an 11 over 6? Because this is a Dana Altman team that's peaking at the right time, that's going to play the same way you've become accustomed to watching Oregon basketball. It's going to be really good defense. They're going to block a ton of shots. You're going to be like, what the heck is going on? And then all of a sudden you look up. They're the team this year where the devaluing of the conference tournament over the regular season by the NCAA kind of works against them, because the Oregon that played in the Pac-12 tournament was not the Oregon that we watched for most of this season. And I think that what is the line on that game? I guess I should probably look that up before I call it an upset, because I think that there's no way I'm alone in this. South Carolina's a good team. Oregon just kind of does this to everybody that they play to start the tournament.
Oregon's getting 1.5.
Okay. So it's about pretty close actually to what I expected.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Oregon was banged up all year, right? Like, I mean, they were hurt like the entire season. They finally got their guys back. That helps. Right? You get good players back, you're going to be better, and that's what we saw in the conference tournament. And I think South Carolina a little bit overvalued. I think we're seeing that in the betting line, but a little bit overvalued on their seed line because they played in the SEC, because they were able to win 26 games. That I think this is one ripe for the pick. I mean, I like Oregon. I really do. I think they're going to win that game. Tyson, I'll tell you this. I'm eyeing it. I don't know if I have the balls. Charleston against Alabama. The total is insane. Like, this is like the highest we've had since the 90s. It's something like that. For college basketball, might as well be. I think it's up to 172 now. I mean, it's a crazy number for college ball. The higher the point total, the higher the variance can happen. Alabama cannot guard. I mean, they just can flat out not guard. It's scary. And if you're going to give a team like Charleston, who can get hot, can bomb from three, an opportunity to get up and down and score, and you're not going to be able to stop anybody, that's tough. I mean, Bama, 112th in adjusted defense, Tyson. 112. I mean, they're second adjusted offense. That's why they're up so high. But my God, I mean, that is tough when I'm evaluating that. So I think if I'm looking at a big one, I think there's a chance that Charleston goes down early. But their defense also 176 in the country. I mean, that's why this line is so high. I mean, Bama might be able to score 120.
We've been waiting on a Charleston upset for 3 years now. Is that right? From the team that they had that was like all 5 seniors and they went 31-3, or whatever it was. Um, Brad, my next one, look, I know that I just kind of picked against McNeese State on my 5-12 line, but wouldn't it be nice to see Will Wade show up and just kind of
Oh,
stamp this thing and just let everyone know I'm back? I'm blowing the doors off. I don't actually think this one's going to happen. I did want to give a shout out because if there was, I know the Long Beach State stuff is like the coolest story going right now. But if Will Wade shows up to this tournament and just drops it on the table in front of everybody, beats Mark Few, right, and then goes through, let's see, who would they play in the next round, and then beats Bill Self, let's call it that, then like that's better than winning a national championship, and that's what I want to happen.
that would be sick. That would be awesome. The other one I have circled here, and maybe this is going to get too popular by the time they tip, but I'm eyeing New Mexico over Clemson.
Yep.
Now, the problem I have with that is the Mountain West is just so historically awful whenever it comes to this tournament. But I think this is a little bit different for this New Mexico team. 23rd in adjusted defense, 41st in adjusted offense. They feel a little bit more balanced. Jamal Mashburn was hurt for a while. Daniel House had to carry him. Daniel House. Clemson's defense is 67th in the country. I think New Mexico is going to be able to score on them. It's just if they can stop Clemson's offense, which is 27th in adjusted offense, that's the matchup. Can New Mexico get in them? Or it's Jalen House. That's what it is. I apologize. Yeah. Daniel House is the NBA player. Can New Mexico get in them and stop their transition? Can stop their looks that they get where they bomb threes? They're efficient, all that good stuff. Because if that happens, I think Clemson could go down big time.
And I hate watching Clemson, so that would be ideal for me. Some of these, like I don't feel like Nevada beating Dayton is an upset. I don't really care what the seed says here, 10 versus 7. I'll let you talk about Duke's first round matchup here, but let's touch on the Kansas versus Samford game because this is everybody's kind of. I have to pick a 13. Like there's a 13 that beats a 4 every year, and this is going to be the one, and I'm so sure of it. First of all, are we positive that Shear and Hunter Dickinson are going to play? Bill Self has said that Hunter Dickinson is good to go and that he's going to play. What does that look like? Is Samford just going to shoot the shit out of the ball and it doesn't matter? Whether you have a 7-footer down there or not. Is this the popular upset pick because it's actually going to be an upset or because Kansas looked so bad while they were banged up to end the year?
Yeah. 10th in adjusted defense for Kansas, 65th in adjusted offense. But I just think if Dickinson plays, because I think he's going to, they're just going to be too big for Samford. Tyson, it sounds to me, just based on what I'm hearing, that even if McCullers does play, like he's going to be super limited. And that may give Samford a little bit of life here, but 69th on adjusted offense, 116th on adjusted defense, that just does not bode well for me, man. Like I'm looking at that, like you need guys who want to slow down the game, are efficient on offense, and can get in you on defense. That's the complete opposite of Samford. Like they are the 14th team in adjusted tempo. Like they're like, oh, we're just going to run you out of the gym. You know who wants to do that? Kansas. They don't want to run sets. They want to get up and down. They want to have their athletes go to work. So I'm kind of agreeing with you here. Like Samford, it feels like that's the one that everybody circled. That's they're going down, and I'm not quite sure that's going to happen. And Tyson, I got to amend it a little bit here, because New Mexico is actually 2.5-point favorite over Clemson. So the betting lines are telling you that these seeds are off. Like, let's just put it that way. But if we're talking strictly seeds and you see the 6 versus the 11, that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about more bracket type of stuff than the betting lines as of now.
Talk to the people about Duke and Vermont quickly.
Okay, so this one scares me. I got to say, like, as a Duke fan, big Duke fan, this Vermont game is something that Duke loses in the past because Vermont is super slow. Like this is not the Vermont teams of the past where they get up and down and they're running tempo. They're 349th in tempo in the country, Tyson. There's only 360 Division I basketball teams. Keep that in mind. The other thing too, which is why I'll put it this way. I don't think Vermont is going to beat Duke. Their offense isn't good enough. They're 159th in adjusted offense and their defense is only 62nd in adjusted defense. Compare that with Duke, and we have another slow team at 231st, but the 7th most efficient offense and the 26th adjusted defensive team in the country. On paper, this is a team that Duke should take care of. Vermont's not going to go up and down, get them out of their comfort zone. They're going to walk the ball up just like Duke wants to do. It just happens that Duke's more efficient on the offensive side, and they can shut down whatever Vermont wants to throw. But this is the type of game that Duke has lost in the past where everybody's just like, oh, God, what's going on?
And hopefully it doesn't happen to you again. It would be awesome if they lost and then all of the neutral fans storm the court. Filipowski just kind of starts throwing hands at whoever's running around down there. Which one of these play-in teams is going to make a run? Because since the play-in's been introduced, it's kind of been like whoever gets hot. Like what was the first year VCU went? Did they go to the Elite Eight or the Final Four?
I think we went to the Final Four, 2011.
Yeah, with Shaka, and then since then it's kind of been Farley Dickinson plays in and then beats Purdue a year ago as the 16 seed. When I'm looking at it, I'm not really buying Boise State, right? But I think Colorado State could be the one. But that's a tough ask to get by a Tony Bennett Virginia team when they're going to play way different than anybody you've seen all year and frustrate the hell out of you. And it's just I'm not seeing one this year, I guess, is my main takeaway here. I don't feel like Colorado is explosive enough to make some of these things happen. Florida would be vulnerable. They would be the one that I would probably think would lose to one of those teams. But as you mentioned, it's like, are we really going to bet on the sixth team in the Pac-12 and the team in the Mountain West?
I'm circling Colorado. And you kind of laid out, it's because Florida is vulnerable to me. I just don't trust the Boise State just because of the Mountain West history. Whether it's unfair or not, we're going to get a good glimpse of it. Like San Diego State really kind of put a damper, I guess, for lack of a better term, on what they did because of what they did last year. But Tyson, this has not been a good This has not been a good conference in this tournament.
No, San Diego State has like all their wins in the last decade.
Yeah, and I'm looking. So let's say Colorado gets past Florida. Marquette, like the metrics look great. I mean, Shock is smart in the tournament ever since that VCU run has been horrendous.
He's been bad, but he's been fun to watch.
It's always fun to watch. Shock is always fun to watch. But, the other thing, Tyler Kolek's banged up. The point guard, the maestro for what they want to do offensively. I mean, just you're giving me a Colorado team with size who started to play well towards the end of the year when people got healthy. Getting the win over Boise State, getting the win over Florida. Now they're playing and they're in it. It's like, oh, man, Marquette cakewalk past Western Kentucky. And then they're going to have to face like a real team. That's what I view. I think they could be a Sweet 16 team.
That would probably be the one that I talk myself into the most. It's just tough, like looking at it because there's a chance they lose tomorrow night and none of it matters.
That's the thing. So let's get into the regions then. We'll go through these. We've touched on some basic parts of this, but we're going to start in the East, and that's the one with Kentucky UConn as the 1 seed, Iowa State as the 2 seed, Illinois as the 3 seed, Auburn as the 4 seed. Just when you were going through this, what were some early things that jumped out to you?
Well, I feel that Auburn might have got the worst draw for them as a 4 that they could, because I really like this Auburn team. I think this Auburn team in maybe North Carolina's part of the bracket or Purdue's or maybe even Houston's would be a team where you're looking at and you go, that might be the team that represents this region in the Final Four. I don't think they match up very well with UConn. I also think they're probably going to get out-coached against UConn, and that's a big part of it here. We're Danny Hurley till we die here on this podcast. But to me, that's like Iowa State, where somebody it's just really hard to talk yourself into. Where like you don't scout helmets in the NFL, you don't scout jerseys in college basketball. Sometimes you have to. Like it's just we've been burned so many times by this team, and then you go, oh, who's the 3? Illinois, who's also screwed everybody in the country over the last 20 since D Brown was there and Darren Williams. Like they've lost big games to everybody when it matters. So like outside of UConn, it feels like there's a lot of programs here who can either get monkeys off their back or just kind of be who we thought they were. And I think the one team that could take the most advantage of that, Brad, is BYU.
Very interesting path for BYU. Beating Duquesne, I think, is completely overvalued at 11. That was shocking to me. I mean, they made a run in the A-10 tournament, and they're on the 11 line. Come on, guys. Yeah. BYU beating Duquesne, they have a real shot at beating Illinois, Tyson, because
I agree.
You want to talk about a paper tiger? I mean, my God, yes, Illinois can score 80 points. They also can give up 100. Like they're 93rd in adjusted defense. Like if they're not stopping you and their shots are falling, you're screwed. Compared to that, the BYU, their offense has been elite this year in their first year in the Big 12, 11th in adjusted offense, but they're also good on defense, 48th in adjusted defense. Like that's a recipe for a team beating a top seed like Illinois. I'd be shocked. I'd be curious to know what that line would be, but I'd be shocked if it was under or if it was over anything above 6 points. I mean, I think BYU. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a one possession type of line.
What do you think about Washington State down here? Because this is a fun team, but it feels like it's going to come crashing down pretty quick.
The thing about Drake, right? So they haven't won in the tournament. And they've been really good. It feels like this is kind of their year because they're finally not like the darling. Like, oh, this is a team that's going to do it. I saw something they too. Now Washington State's got to travel to Omaha. That's where these matchups are being played. That's like a bus ride for Drake. They're going to have a ton of support. Washington State's got to get on the plane. Like, I don't know if that factors in. I mean, that's something to pay attention to. I think Drake's pretty good. Other things, Pac-12, the West Coast just has not performed very well in this tournament over the year. It's been a while since they've had champion. Drake's a good look for me there. But, I mean, them versus Iowa State, that would be a tough game. But I agree with you overall. I mean, it's hard for me to look at Iowa State. They're lucky that they're on the side with BYU instead of the other side with Auburn, UConn, those type of guys. But, man, we talk about the history with the back-to-back and how they've struggled. It would not shock me if Auburn's representing this region. This
be the
team
one.
is good, man. Let's put it this way. So Ken Palm, based on adjusted efficiency margins, to the difference between adjusted offense and adjusted defense. UConn 1, Houston 2, Purdue 3. Those are 3 of the number 1 seeds. Then Auburn at the 4 seed is sitting here 4th, Tyson, based on that. 10th in the country in adjusted offense, 4th in adjusted defense. Like, this is a real team. They can score, they can defend. That's what you're looking for in March Madness, obviously. But that team doesn't. There's somebody to me who can beat someone like Connecticut.
Yeah, it's going to be, hopefully that's the game when I kind of look at this portion of the bracket that I just hope we get, because UConn is a freight train. Like, you win a national championship and then come back 31-3 in your like the losses that they had, like the loss to Creighton looks bad, and then you look back like a couple weeks before it, it's like, oh, you beat them by 40. Like, this is a really, really talented, good team. I think Auburn's the only one physical enough at the top part of the East region to really even give them a sweat.
Let's move into the South. So, number 1 seed here, Houston. Number 2 seed, Marquette. Number 3 is Kentucky. And number 4 is Duke. Interesting region here. I think a lot of teams who do different things. There's strengths for ones, like we're really good in this one aspect, really bad in this other aspect. You got the flip side. So some are really good at offense, bad at defense. Some really good at defense, bad at offense. And you have the guys in the middle who can kind of do it all. To me, this screams Houston. I mean, this is just a Houston region to me. What else were you looking at when you're taking a look at the South?
Well, as soon as this one came out, I immediately just worked backwards. It was Houston's in the Final Four, and let's fill the rest of this thing in. I think they might walk their way there. Like, Wisconsin is a fun team, and they might just blitz somebody out of this tournament. The problem is, like, they have to win 2 games to get to Houston, and at that point, Houston's probably gotten through Nebraska or Texas A&M relatively sweat-free there. I don't love this Kentucky team. Like, I just think there's a chance that they're going to fall in love with shooting the ball Cal post 2020 style and just lose their way out of the tournament. Like, there's no Oscar Tshiebwe here, right? Like, this isn't we're just gonna have a guy get 30 boards on this version of this team. But I don't care what the SEC tournament told us or stats and things. Like, I don't like this Kentucky team at all. I don't like Florida. Marquette would be the one, man, but like, how many times are we going to fall for this trick? Like, I feel like everybody in the country last year was like, this is the year Marquette is going to go to the Final Four. They might end up winning the whole thing, and we get disappointed again. Like, Shaka Smart in big moments is electric, but he's not very good.
So, since Shaka took the 11th seeded VCU to the Final Four in 2011, he is 2-8 in the tournament since, with upset losses as the 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 seed.
That's pretty good. Well, I mean, what are you going to do? You're playing you're coaching a tiny program like Texas.
Right. That's the thing.
How are you supposed to get recruits?
Now, the interesting part about Marquette this year, they're 21st in adjusted offense, 19th in adjusted defense. So, like, the metrics say this team is the team who can potentially make a run. And so I just went through, I think Colorado could potentially knock them off. But the nice thing for Marquette is they're on the bottom part of this bracket or the region in the South. So I think Kentucky is live to be upset early because I agree with you. Their defense is just atrocious. So if you're going to play, I mean, even if you play Kentucky, I mean, Marquette's going to be able to score on them, could potentially shut down that offense. So let's say the best team they face is Kentucky. You're looking at them in the Elite Eight if you're Marquette. Or if there is an upset, whether it's Texas Tech or NC State getting through Kentucky, you're dealing with, I think, a soft 6-11. I mean, NC State's 11 because they won the ACC tournament. Don't fall in love with that. I think Texas Tech is overvalued. And so this is a Marquette team who, in all honesty, Tyson, they should be in the Elite Eight if you look at everything and you base everything off of their statistical profile.
Yeah, it's just I'm sick of basing things off Marquette's statistical profile, and I think there's a team that we'll talk about here in a minute in the Midwest region where I have pretty similar feelings. It must be a Big East thing.
Maybe it may be, and there's only 3 teams in now, so that's the interesting part. They're gonna have to carry some water, but
Does that make sense to you that the
no,
Big East gets 3 teams, like, and
no.
they're what 1, 2, and 3 seeds?
Yeah, I mean it's crazy.
It doesn't
Again,
make
the
any
committee.
sense.
It's not for this podcast, but man, I think they've had better years. Let's move into the West. So number 1 seed here is North Carolina. Number 2 is Arizona. Number 3 is Baylor. Number 4 is Alabama. So we've talked about some of these guys, the North Carolina potentially being vulnerable. Arizona, we've talked about their history in the past. Alabama's their inability to defend. I want to talk about Baylor a little bit because, since they won that championship, I feel like a lot of their performances, a lot of their reputation is off of name only. What's your sense on this Baylor team?
I think you're right. Like, I think that a lot of, like, when we talk about Baylor, even going back, what was it 2 years ago? They had that epic game with North Carolina that was just like ridiculous, and it was
Yeah.
a bunch of lottery picks and all this stuff. And they were like playing a different style of basketball than they did the year prior, and they're playing a different style of basketball now than they kind of were then. This is not the when they won that national championship. It was like, we're taking you out back to just like, we're going to put you in a wood chipper, right? We're going to suffocate you. We're going to play full court press and all that stuff. And they'll do some of that cute stuff right now, but they don't have the athletes or the guys to kind of make it believable. And there are times like throughout the regular season where you kind of look and you go, oh, they did that to them? Like that looks impressive. And then when you start watching with your eyes, I think my eyes tell a different story than the metrics might when it comes to Baylor.
Yeah, and based on the metrics too, just kind of add, you're right. I mean, 64th in adjusted defense, a far cry from when they were at the top of the defensive ratings when they went on that run. And then they're 6th in adjusted offense. Like, this is an offensively gifted team who struggles to defend. That's just never a good recipe, which is crazy to think about when you say Baylor. And I'll throw it to you here too, because, Scott Drew's been the coach. I mean, 11 of the 13 wins have come against double-digit seeds outside of their 2021 title run. They've been a top 5 seed 6 other times, and they've gotten upset by the number 6, 7, 12, and 14 seeds. So, that's what you got to keep in mind here. Now, I don't think Colgate's going to be the one to do it. This is not the Colgate team that can get up and down, shoot you out of the gym. This is just not your brother's Colgate team, man. Like, I think they're going to struggle against Baylor to get ran out of the gym. But if I'm projecting forward, if they play New Mexico, that could be a battle.
That'd be a tough game. That would be a tough game.
What do you think of Nevada-Dayton?
Dude, I don't care about this. Like, it's tough to say at a first-round matchup, and I'm obviously looking forward to it. I don't think either one of these teams have life after the round of 64, is kind of where I'm coming at it from. This is not your brother's Dayton team. This is not the same Dayton Flyers, Obi Toppin and all those guys that were totally going to win a national championship, and the whole thing kind of blew up in their faces. When you look at these two, it's who are they drawing next, right? And it's like, oh, it's going to be Arizona. And Arizona, for as much shit as we just talked about them throughout this entire podcast, they're just going to be bigger and better than you, and they're going to be faster. And at a certain point, like, Princeton was able to beat Arizona last year because of the methodical way that they played offense. And we all know about Princeton and all this stuff. It wasn't, 1940s Princeton that we saw a year ago, but it was like back cut. We're swinging. We're going to find the open look, and we're just going to keep running the same action over and over again that you can't stop. Dayton and Nevada don't have that capability because they don't have that. I don't want to call it a crutch because that feels like disrespectful to that Princeton team, but if things go south, like, they're going to want to shoot the ball, and you want to get into a shooting contest with Arizona, that's not going to end well for anybody in this field, let alone a 7 or a 10.
Yeah, Arizona 8th in adjusted offense, 12th in adjusted defense. So their defense has improved. And I think that's the biggest catalyst for what I'm looking at here, Tyson. I mean, this is a team that could win the national championship based on metrics. Like we talked about that early. I think they probably have the cleanest path to the Elite Eight. North Carolina, to me, it feels like they could have some bumps in the road. I mean, let's talk about this. So if Michigan State beats Mississippi State, it's North Carolina versus Michigan State. I know we're kind of throwing it to the side. We don't like this Michigan State team at all. How many times we said that the past 10 years? And somehow they always find a way to do something. Like it's crazy. It's uncanny, but it happens. If St. Mary's gets past Grand Canyon, if they get past Alabama, and you got a St. Mary's game against North Carolina, that could be interesting. Even if it's in Alabama, can they just get hot and just shoot North Carolina at the gym? There's something there. I think there's more ways for North Carolina to go down. I think there's less ways for this Arizona team to go down. And I know we've been saying that for it feels like 3 years now, and they always find a way to do it. But this Arizona team feels more solid. I guess like there's just less turnovers, less volatility. They feel like they're committed to the defensive end, and I think that's a big reason why I think they can advance deep in this tournament.
Well, weirdly enough, the team that kind of matches up best with him on their kind of quadrant there is a Clemson team that we both think is going to lose, and so does Vegas. And so I think that they're getting to the Elite Eight as well. I will say that if I had to pick one region where somebody at a 4 seed or above comes out to represent the Final Four, I think it would be the West, and I think it would be St. Mary's.
Ooh,
I
okay.
think somebody's trying to snatch that West Coast Conference. Just let everybody know, hey, we've been better than Gonzaga for the last 4 years, but the tournament keeps coming around and we keep losing, and I don't know why. And this might be the year.
Okay, let's get into the Midwest to close this out. Number 1 seed Purdue, number 2 seed Tennessee, number 3 seed Creighton, and number 4 seed Kansas. So we talked about Kansas with their injury concerns. We know the history of Purdue. Tennessee we'll get into here, but I know you wanted to mention another Big East team, and they're both our darlings. We love Creighton. We drank the Kool-Aid forever. So what's the deal with this Creighton team?
I've been trying so hard to not buy into this like all year, and every time I turn on the TV and they're on, I'm just like, I love this basketball team. And it was kind of an exclamation mark got put on with the beating that they gave Connecticut, well, maybe a month ago now, something like that, where it was like, okay, this is a team that I'm going to choose to believe in, because we know like the warts that are around this Creighton program. And like I've said a couple times, some of these teams look pretty. Creighton always looks pretty, even when they're playing like hard nosed and it's a slow paced game and they're like physical and all that. It just doesn't feel the same. But I think this Creighton team has the opportunity to kind of shut some people up with a game against Tennessee. And if that is the matchup that we get, that's the one where I think I'm most nervous for Creighton, if I'm holding Creighton future ticket to get to the Final Four or something like that, because I think Tennessee physically just presents some really unique challenges that the Big East is a really good conference and they deserve to have more than 3 teams. I mean, Tennessee was essentially the class of the SEC for most of this season. It's just kind of a different level. And Brad, this is the year Purdue goes to the Final Four, right?
It's got to be. You know, this Purdue team is just that feels different than last year, I will say. Now, we both talked about it. We kind of mentioned they can shoot, and the other thing is they don't crumble when you press them. Like they still have some mistakes, but last year they looked like a freaking YMCA team. It was crazy. I mean, they could not figure out the press, and
they were playing a YMCA team,
basically. And Creighton, the God, I want to buy into them. You know, they got to be so thankful that Akron,
yes,
it's the Akron team and not any of the other team like Toledo or somebody like that who was favored to win the conference tournament. I mean, holy smokes, they could have been in trouble. You know, classic Creighton collapse early, but you know, maybe they build upon what they did last year. Like they went to the Elite Eight, almost went to the Final Four. The addition of Steven Ashworth, I think, has been huge for this Creighton team, Tyson. Like they got another guy besides Shireman who can handle it, another guy besides Trey Alexander who can create his own shot, hit threes. And last thing on Creighton here too, 12th in adjusted offense, 24th in adjusted defense. That has not been the case for Creighton. Normally their defense is just abysmal. And so, you know, that's a little something here. As far as Tennessee goes, like the metrics just say, okay, you got to trust this Tennessee team. You got to trust this Tennessee team. They have the 3rd best defense in the country. They're 29th in adjusted offense. But can you really ever trust freaking Rick Barnes, Tyson? I'm sorry. 9-21 against the spread in the NCAA tournament.
Pretty
8-17
good.
against the spread as the favorite on the seed line. Come on, failed to cover in 15 of his last 18 games. What is going on here?
Well, like I said about Shaka, it's the same thing with Rick Barnes. What do you want him to do with a tiny program like Texas? Like, what did you want this guy to out recruit some of these teams that dropped him? I don't think so. Dude, this Tennessee team is just like 12 Grant Williams. That's what I see when I watch this team play. Like when I'm looking at them, I'm just like, damn, these guys are like they're big for no reason. It looks like a football team running around out there, and they're wildly impressive when they're locked in. The problem is, the Rick Barnes teams often aren't locked in when it comes to tournament time. They didn't seem locked in the SEC tournament, and then on top of it all, you got to be able to score in bunches. And it kind of feels like this Tennessee team can withstand runs because they don't really let you go on any, but they don't really rebound from somebody. Like, look at their losses and then go look at the runs throughout that game. And if somebody scores 10 in a row on Tennessee, they've had a hell of a time trying to come back and claw their way out of that. Whereas, if you look at another 2 seed in Arizona, they'll let you score 15 on them in a row. It doesn't matter. We're just going to come back and shoot. And we're back in this basketball game. Tennessee is probably the 2 seed that I trust the least, which means that they will be cutting down the nets in Phoenix.
Well, there's a good reason why Tennessee you trust least as a 2 seed, Tyson, because Tennessee has been a top 4 seed 8 times, and they have been upset every single time that happens, including losses to number 7s, 8, 9, 11, another 11, and a 12 seed. As a top 4 seed, they've made just 4 Sweet 16s, no Elite 8s, and they still have never made it to the Final 4. So there's a little nugget for you there.
Well, this year doesn't seem like it's going to be the year. I think that it's going to come down to Creighton and Purdue out of this region. I do think Gonzaga can give Purdue some unique problems. I'm one of the few people that I've heard hold this opinion that I think this Gonzaga team might actually be built better for this style of tournament than some of the really, really good teams that they've had in the past. I just think, Mark Few looked around a couple of years ago and was like, oh, I'm just going to get athletes. And that certainly helped things. But this is the softest section to me, the Midwest is, because I think that whoever comes out of here is likely going to be the worst team in the Final Four.
Ooh, okay. I like that. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our regional breakdowns. Again, we didn't want to go through this is who we're picking here. Like, you have your own process, you have your own idea. We just want to give you our thoughts on what we see, different upsets we want to circle, all that good stuff. So when it's all said and done, who is going to be the 2024 men's college basketball Division I champions? Tyson.
I'm having a heck of a time picking against UConn. Like, how are they? Look, we had this whole conversation a year ago after they cut down the nets and won the national championship about UConn being a blue blood or not. What's going to happen if they have more titles than Duke? Right?
Oof.
Like, at what point does it just become, oh, they're the class? And we mentioned the stats this year and all that stuff. I think that UConn is uniquely equipped with attitude in a way that some of these number 1 seeds in years past that have won national championships aren't. The problem is Houston is also equipped with that same attitude, and if they play each other, that's going to be a really tough game, and that's what I think is going to happen.
And I'm going to go the other side. Houston. That is my selection. It would not shock me if it's UConn, Houston, although history says UConn will be out before then. I think I'd go well for my pick here. But adjusted defense second in the country. Adjusted offense 17th in the country. This is coming off a year when they were in the Big 12 for the first time. Remember last year, everybody said the Big 12, the SEC. Oh, the Big 12 is actually the best conference. They have so many teams in. Look at this. Houston, we can't ever take them seriously. They don't play in a real conference. Well, first year in the real conference, they just ran through everybody. This Houston team is legit. I think they have better players than they've had in the past when they've been upset early. I think they're pieced better together. I think this is the year they finally do it. I don't care about the blue jersey thing. I think it might be on a cycle, Tyson. Louisville, the red team won.
Right.
It was Baylor, the green team, but in between all these blues, and now it's the red team's turn again. Houston's going to cut down the nets. They're going to be the champs, and it's going to be. They're in Phoenix too. I mean, it's hot. Let's go red.
That's true.
That's true. I mean, something there.
By that logic, 2027 national championship game future, put it on Tulane right now. We're going to get a green team back in there. We're going to get a weird one. I'm excited for this tournament. It feels like last year was so much, like every year we say, oh, there's so much chaos. But last year, like uniquely was more chaotic than normal, which kind of means that this one probably going to end up chalk.
Yeah, it feels that way. I mean, just when we were going through this together, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I just don't really like Yale Auburn. I just don't see Yale winning. That's an early one there. Can Grand Canyon beat St. Mary's? Sure, but this St. Mary's team feels like better than in years past. And I feel like we can say that for a lot of the different teams here. Like you look at your classic 4-13s, it's like statistically, profiles don't necessarily equate to a big upset coming.
Well, we'll see. I think that if any of the 13s are going to be the 4, it would bring me the most joy if Alabama shot 100 threes and only made about 4 of them.
You would love that. That is for sure. And it would bring me the least amount of joy if it was my Dukies who went down early, because that'd be a tough scene.
Well, we'll give you to the round of 32.
Yeah, I'm hoping they can at least make it to Houston, because either way, my champ's still in it, or Duke surprised me, gets to Elite Eight. Maybe it's their South region to come out if they get to another Final Four. Who knows?
That would be pretty fun. And in the meantime, between when Duke plays Houston, we're going to have picks for all the other games too. And those will be in the Chalkboard app. It's an app you can download in the App Store, Google Play, wherever you download your apps. I'm on Wagner tonight. Brad's on Wagner tonight. Brad can't bet it because New York has rules against betting. It's stupid. I don't understand it. I'm a stupid hillbilly out here in Montana. None of that makes any sense to me. But those picks are in the Chalkboard. And those are things that we give out, throughout the day. It's free. We'll let you write in. The group name is I said ISWIS presents the Roundtable Bets. I'm pretty sure. I think I nailed that one. It's been a while since I've said this. We should probably write up a read or something. But yeah, just hop right in. We'll let you in. It's free. UFC 300 is coming up. NFL draft stuff is coming up. You can throw futures on the WNBA draft if you want. Whatever you're betting on, throw it in there, and we're happy to tail.
I have 2 picks for tomorrow in the playing games. Montana State laying it -3.5 over Grambling. Scary. Tyson, this is a tournament. They've been on a run. I know we said we don't value the tournament winners. I think it's a little bit more positive when it looked like that in the conference tournament. Like Montana State looked good.
We don't value it when it's in these little tiny peon conferences like the ACC and the Pac-12. But when you get to the big boys and the big sky, then it matters.
Exactly. I'm also taking Colorado -140 on the money line against Boise State. I'm staking my claim here. Let's go Buffs.
Let's go. And share with us whatever tips that you have to not get caught watching these at work.
Yes, please do that. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. Follow us on our socials, X, Instagram, TikTok. It's the same handle at ISWIS_pod. So big weekend of college basketball. We'll be back to talk about everything that took place. Like crazy upsets that happened, previewing the next round, all that good stuff. That's going to happen next week, in addition to us diving back into the gridiron. Free agency, we already kind of missed the window on that because my technical difficulties, all that. But we'll start talking about NFL draft more in depth. We'll start breaking things down in terms of, what teams did this offseason, all those goodies. So make sure you stay connected with us, subscribe so you don't miss anything. We hope you enjoy the basketball, and we'll talk to y'all next week. Till then, guys, peace.